This is a video review of my former workplace. Think of this as a video version of a written online review or a type of customer feedback. Hopefully this catches on with more people. After all, people get yearly reviews or biannually. Products get reviewed, etc. Well, I see it as only fitting that the employer gets one as well. Not only that, but gets one that they don't control, meaning that bullshit pre-made questions and comment sections they give you, the employee, is a waste. I will be going through the 3 years I was with this place being Markmonitor, the 3 years I was with this place, and not only run my guts about the foolishness that went on in that place, so anyone thinking of working there can know what they may be in for and what to watch out for, but also give some advice as to, this will be at the end, give some advice as to what to do in certain situations, be it with them or any employer that tries the shit they pulled on me. I'll try to keep this to major points in the timeline, but I also do want to make sure that one and all get the entire picture. While I was going to drop names so one and all know how fucking serious I am about this, due to the advice of the lawyers, plural, again, they're just my friends. It's not like, oh my god, I consulted some lawyers. Yeah, they are in fact lawyers, but they were my friends from high school. Well, him and his wife. That I had reviewed this whole thing after I was done. I decided not to, despite the fact that I was informed it would be a war I could win if anyone from this place came after me. Thanks to, and this actually is thanks to the proof I have of damn near all my claims, but it would be a somewhat uphill war nonetheless. So yeah, just to make it easier, I decided not to do that and give them less stuff to grab onto. Anyway, good, I say. Right, so then, no doubt people, no doubt the people still working there, assuming they're the same people and they're not like completely new people, will get wind of this video, especially since I plan on sending it directly to them. I still remember the email, guys. I still remember it. Good, I say. Now you all get to know how you may be getting used and or lied to by the person sitting next to you, much less. Enjoy. Let's begin. Right. So when I went in for the interview for this job, Markmonitor had recently been bought by Thomson Reuters, I was told. I didn't start there till about a month later, since the person who had given me the green light, the person who had to give the green light, went on vacation for a month. Very efficient, I know. On the very first day of my working there, some major fuck-up happened, and at the end of it, I was told by two different guys, quote, "This place has a huge communication problem, and you're seeing it now," unquote. That was my first of what would be seemingly infinite red flags, but it was the very first day, and I wanted to be nothing but positive. So rather than putting it in the back of my mind for safekeeping, I instead cast it out of my mind in order to maintain what I now know in hindsight to be delusions of optimistic grandeur. I did my 2 weeks of quote-unquote training, to which point I only learned how to log fish. I then moved to the shift I was going to be working at from then on. There are 4 shifts, all of them 12 hours. I was on what I call the dungeon shift. Weekend nights from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., Friday, Saturday, and Sunday one week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday the next. This shift ensured I had no life outside of that place, as most everyone else was partying on the weekends, on the weekend nights, while I was stuck in a room with a bunch of dudes for 12 hours. On my days off, everyone was at work. I did this for a year and a half. Not sure what was up with the shift lead on said dungeon shift. This is the very first one. Shift lead on said dungeon shift. But one thing I noticed about him, all he would do is watch anime and play video games on his phone after quote-unquote working on the newer tickets for about 30 minutes to an hour out of a 12-hour shift, while always giving the older tickets to the other guys who had to find some new way to contact the ISP, the domain owner, and or the registrar, even though there was really only one way to contact them, and that was it. None of this mattered to me as long as I got paid, obviously. The problems with the shift lead came when people started sleeping off. Of all the people I ever worked with and of all the shifts I've ever been on, I've been on 3 out of the 4 shifts. Uh, he's the only one that I never caught asleep. Apart from the fact that he would disappear for long periods of time, at some point during the night, he let it be known that not only does he keep the same sleep schedule even on his day off, but that he took some pills every day to help keep him awake. Though he made sure not to say what kind of pills they were. I always wondered that. When I fell asleep, he had no problem yelling at me to stay awake and work. Well, that's fine. When the other 3 guys on the shift at the time fell asleep, he said nothing. If anyone saw the setup of the place, it looked like a long trough. Him and myself were on one side, where he only had to look to his left to see what I was doing. Everyone else was on the other side, to where he had to get off his ass to see what was going on, which he happened to only do when said guys on the other side of said trough were awake. My problem with this is not him telling me to stay awake. It was him at one point threatening to send me home without pay if I don't stay awake, despite the fact that 2 other guys later that same night was knocked out and got no threats thrown at them. And as said before, all he does over 90% of the night is play video games on his phone and watch anime. Yet has the nerve to say anything to me who has to work, or my numbers won't show and I end up having to hear the manager's mouth. With the exception of one, no one who slept in that place was doing so for hours on end. It was for 3 to 11 or so minutes at most, again out of a 12-hour shift, before they woke up and was good for the rest of the night, more or less. By his very own admission, he would be fighting a losing war against sleep had it not been for those pills he took, sleep schedule or not. I am not getting strung up on drugs for a job. So yeah, if you need to take fucking pills to do this job, yeah, that might say something about the job itself, not about the people. He's the only one that was able to fight sleep. He's the only one that is on drugs to do it. Okay. In any case, after that threat was made, I then instantly wrote a rather detailed letter to the manager, rather bluntly explaining all of what goes down on the shift as far as who works and who has every reason to be tired and who is getting paid to do whatever they feel like doing and needs to shut the fuck up. Okay. Guess it got back to him because he made sure not to say shit to me for the short time that I was on that shift before I moved to the weekday night shift. Good for me, because if I had to deal with him acting like he was looking out the window when it was nighttime, when he was really looking at the reflection of my computer screen one more time, I was going to go off. Every time he did that, I made it a point to stand up so he couldn't see my screen. Then when he went back to his seat, I sat back down. I moved to the weekday night shift, which was the perfect shift to be on. I don't have to see anyone like the weekday day shift. I go against rush hour traffic both ways, and I get my weekends off. The shift leader of that shift was surprised I didn't know how to do other aspects of the job, such as work on tickets, despite having been at the place for 1.5 years now. It shouldn't be surprising, considering that was all I ever was taught. Not only that, I shouldn't be expected to ask to be taught things any more than a student should have to ask a teacher to teach them whatever they are to know in the class. The teacher should have a rubric of what is to be learned and teach it. So too should this place. You want me to learn how to make tickets, work on tickets and stuff? Teach it. Don't expect me to go asking for you to teach me. Seems pretty simple. That being said, one of the guys ended up showing me how to work on tickets, which I mastered in one day, meaning less than one shift. Time goes by, people come and go. And what was interesting was the mass exodus of damn near all the engineers. Damn near all at once. Right? Yeah, so this is like within like a week, 2 weeks, this engineer's leaving, that engineer's leaving. It was crazy. If that's not a red flag, I don't know what is. I heard varied reasons for resignation in damn near unison, but whatever the reason, or reasons plural, one thing was clear: it was a bad sign. Hell, even the one legitimate engineer that they did manage to keep was going to leave and even sent a farewell email to everyone. Until they decided to stop being stingy and open the coffers to appease him. When I left, he was the only real engineer still standing. Sorry, Engineer Beta, and one and all should know who he is, considering he's the only other quote-unquote engineer there. Yeah, Engineer Beta. If Engineer Alpha ever said fuck it, you can't do all of what he can and keep that chicken shit place running. You got your Enter the Matrix screensavers, though. Side note lesson from that event. The mass exodus of the engineers, almost all of them except for one, thanks to the money. Side note lesson from that event. A quote I heard from someone who was quoting someone else named Bill Britt, which says, quote, "No one pays you what you're worth. They pay you the least amount it costs to replace you," unquote. Something everyone everywhere should keep in mind, including in this place I'm reviewing. Especially since I was able to learn that Fish Labs, my ex-workplace direct competitor, who does the exact same shit, at least, if not more, starts their people off in the 20s per hour, while we, or at least I, started off at 15. Okay. More time pass, more people come and go, and the weekday night ends up with a new shift lead. The old shift lead and his twin brother had left. Simply put, one of two things was the case with this guy. Okay. Either he kept busting the fattest nut humanly possible before he came to work, or he had a medical condition. The latter wouldn't surprise me, considering his weight. Think the comic book guy from The Simpsons, or one of those people that breathe so hard that you think they just sprinted an Iron Man when they're just standing still there, relaxed. Yeah, it's one of those deals. In either case, this guy came in, and by 7:30 p.m., with electron-sized laser precision, he was knocked out and snoring. Meaning literally 7:29 and 59 seconds, he was wide awake like he was on speed. 1 second later, he's in a coma, and the coming of God for this world can't wake him. Luckily for us, we all had our cell phones with headphones, so we had shit going while we worked. So we had shit going while we worked. I had a 4-hour mix of relaxation songs I had saved on my favorites on YouTube. Link in the more info panel. Okay. Actually, there's a bunch of them, really, but that's the one that I listen to the most. This new comatose shift lead had the gall to talk to me about needing to be more professional and showing up on time. I gave him a look like, quote, "Nigga, your fat ass needs to go choke on a poisonous donut or some shit. This company is paying you to sleep for 10.5 hours minimum each day. I highly doubt me being 5 to 10 minutes late and sleeping off at random times on the shift for an aggregate of about 15 minutes. I'm not the only one who does both of those two things, mind you. Only to bust my ass for the rest of the shift with numerical stats to prove it. More on that later. But with numerical stats to prove it is going to be unacceptable in comparison." He, of course, saw the hypocrisy of what he was saying and tried to soften it by talking about how he needs to work on his sleeping problem. This is a problem that I come to find out he's been having for years in that place. Like, he's been there for years before he became a shift lead, and he's had that problem for years. And everybody knows it. But yet he's still working. He was still working there. Okay. To which point I gave him a look like, "I then shut the fuck up and go work on it. Until then, get off my nuts." Interestingly enough, this was brought up only one more time in the future before he was fired, to which point the same two looks were given. Standard issue, time passes, various shit keeps happening, so on and so forth. The dungeon shift lead leaves, and a new imbecile takes his place. Something was deathly wrong with this fool, but I suppose management didn't care. They needed to fill the shift lead position quick. People just kept leaving. I wonder why. Quick, and despite the fact that he was only there for a few months, he was the, quote, most senior person. Right? Nobody else wanted to. There were obviously more senior people in the place, obviously, but they didn't want to move to the weekend night shift. So he was the most senior person, only being there for a few months. That's pretty bad. Keep that in mind for later. Most senior person. Keep that in mind for later. Excuse me. He seems like he would be the model workhorse. He took as much overtime as possible, despite the fact that after a certain point it wasn't worth it. Sometimes more than 7 days in a row. He was dumb enough to brag about how he already paid so much in taxes. Some egregious figure the rest of us would take about 4 months to catch up to. He would show up 2 or more hours early. Yeah, he's one of those people. Right? And sit there with some leather briefcase like bag as though he was anyone of consequence when truthfully he was nothing more than the equivalent of a cashier with keys to close the store at night. Model employee, right? Sure. Except when it came to actual work. This fool spent the majority of his shift looking at Turkish news. Turkish. Keep that also in mind for later. Far later, but later nonetheless. Turkish news, or on BMW forums, or BMW store buying shit. Keep that also in mind for a little bit right now. Every now and then he would buy shit for his car on the company computer. This fool honestly thought that because he cleared all of the things in the browser that it meant he couldn't be tracked. Shows you the kind of people they get in there. He, for some odd reason, didn't realize that didn't stop anyone monitoring the system, meaning network traffic, okay? Monitoring the system from seeing network traffic, especially since we had to log into a domain. Anyway, truth be told, I shouldn't be surprised. This is an early 20s quote-unquote adult who decided after he fucked up his Nissan Sentra in the snow trying to come to work when he was told not to, again, from what I was told, he decided to go and get a late model BMW. I guess his Sentra was insured or his parents gave it to him or some shit. Okay, late model BMW. That's right, someone who wasn't making more than I was is going to get a car that's a bitch in price, even more of a bitch to maintain and repair, and just makes you look like a fucking bitch because everyone knows you're posing. Anyway, in any case, that will come to bite him in the ass sooner or later, unless his mom, who he still lives with from what I've come to find out, bails his ass out. All the posing and faking he did to make himself feel superior to everyone else wouldn't have bothered me if he simply fucked off and left me alone. He, for some reason, couldn't do that, so I ended up writing a rather detailed email to the manager in an attempt to fix the problem without going to HR. I actually still have that letter. Much like a lot of other letters that I've written, I have it here on Thunderbird. Trying not to go the HR route because, when you go the HR route, once you open that door, it's opened, But anyway. While passively letting it be known that I would go straight there if this foolishness wasn't fixed. Wasn't fixed right away. It worked for a while, but soon found out he wasn't the biggest problem I would have. In all, it was very comical. He would pretend to be hard of hearing at selective times. He wouldn't hear you yelling at him a foot away, but he can hear some faint shit that someone on the other side of the room is listening to and tell them to turn it down. He honestly thought he was more intelligent than everyone else there, really. Even his own Turkish people. There's a shitload of Turks there and they keep coming in, so yeah. Yet, he couldn't figure out that everyone, A, didn't like him, B, knew he was lying since he had no speech problem, which is something that people who are truly hard of hearing have, even in the slightest. This was proven by someone working there, another Turkish guy, right, who was hard of hearing and had the speech problem to match, even though it was very slight. You kind of had to listen for it, but you could hear it once. It's like, oh yeah, shit, he does have kind of a lisp. And C was laughing at him for trying so hard in deluding himself into thinking he was more than he actually is. Here's where things get good. The comatose shift lead on my current shift, this is again weekday nights, current shift, ended up getting fired after the manager caught him dead asleep 2 nights in a row. The first of which he caught me faintly asleep. I mean, I was dozing off. I wasn't exactly like knocked out, right? No doubt in anyone's mind who was the one that tipped off the manager to show up, especially since he usually stays back and waits for the weekend, for the weekday night shift to come in if he has something to say. For anyone wondering, it was the dungeon shift lead, Mr. BMW, yeah, who was there both nights when this all went down. And interestingly enough, he happened to just walk out of the room both times. He walked out of the room both times when the manager showed up. Huh. Which tells me that the manager was there waiting, and he was like, okay, is he asleep? Yeah, he's asleep. And then he went in there. Yeah, it's not dumb. Not dumb, dude. Anyway. Now then, since yours falsely was by far the most senior person on the shift when he got fired, meaning the one with the most experience, you'd think naturally I would get the shift lead spot. Not only was I, and of course for anybody who wants to say, well dude, you admitted to sleeping and all this shit before, again, this dude that got fired, that was made the shift lead, that got fired, he has been doing that day in, day out, religiously for years. Okay? Not only by his kind of admission, but by other people who've also been working there for longer than I have, that have admitted that as well. Years, and yet he still got the shift lead position, so that's not going to work. And again, I'm not sleeping for the longest fucking time. Plus, I'm actually doing work, unlike the people who don't sleep, supposedly. Anyway, not only was I passed up for someone who had a year less experience than I did, meaning he was only there for about 1 year when this happened, I wasn't even asked if I wanted it. When it was announced, I smiled, rather sinisterly now that I think back on it, actually, locking my eyes on the manager, like a bull from across a wide-open field. The sad fuck couldn't even look me in the face for more than like 100th of a second, and sure as hell got the fuck out of there, seemingly faster than humanly possible after it was all said and done. That night, and every other night thereafter, I started looking for a new place to work. This new weekday night shift lead was the new weekday night shift lead was the coolest person out of all 4 shifts, or certainly in the top 3. As far as I know, he was the best. I'm glad he got the position and not me, if for nothing else because of the increased work without the increase in pay. Knew this was the case, but I heard this from all the other shift leads that used to work there at some point. I'm not sure how he managed to always be, or at least seem, extra busy, since every other shift lead I ever worked with till that point just played video games, watched movies, surfed the net, and all else. With maybe a few seconds of actual work sprinkled in. Yet they were there for years, and the place still quote unquote ran. I guess. Okay. My only objection was not being offered the spot so I could turn it down. Funny thing about it all is the training he needed to get up to speed with being a shift lead that I didn't need, as far as I knew most of it already. Neither of us had prior shift lead experience, so that wasn't going to work. But at least it let me know where I stood in the place. What made me know for a fact that him getting that position was a botched job is that I mentioned something called a turnover log. And of course, this is a panel that the shift leaving for the day or night used to get the incoming shift up to speed on whatever the foolishness we were fucking with while we were there. Something we're all to use every day and night. And he, now 2 years in, asked what that was, to which point I busted out laughing inwardly. He then voiced what I was thinking when, after I showed him where it was, he said, quote, "The training here is so bad. I've been here for this fucking long and I'm just now hearing about this." Had to laugh inwardly. In any case, good for him. He got his position of pseudo power. I'm sure that will look good on your resume. Keep that in mind for later, guys. And I got to keep my head down, dispensing sage-like wisdom whenever called on by him. One example was at the beginning of what would be the previous shift lead's final days. The manager had sent the soon-to-be new shift lead a message in his email, and the sleeping and not helping with questions, and said incoming shift lead asked me to translate the meaning. I looked at it for 5 seconds, knew instantly what it meant, and told him, simply, what this is saying is, quote, "I need you to confirm what I already know to be true. If you don't, I will note you down as having had lied to me." Simple. Simple as. Ooh, some mystical prophecy, writing on the wall. No, that's all it was. Anyway, a little more time goes by, bit more day-to-day grinding, and then one day we get the news that once again, this place, Thomson Reuters now, well, not Markmonitor, is getting bought. So now Markmonitor, now named Clarivate Analytics, ask your doctor if Clarivate is right for you. This shit sounds like some kind of fucking thing you take for a venereal disease or an STD or something. Clarivate. Who the hell came up with that? Anyway, now Clarivate Analytics will be bought from Thomson Reuters and sold to some place called Bering Asia. Interestingly enough, the manager made it a point to assure us that we weren't getting bought and sold so much for bad reasons. Simple logic let me see past his bullshit once again, due to the simple reason that no one sells something that's making them money. They sell something that's costing more than it makes to someone who thinks they can have it make more money than it costs to buy and maintain. With that, some changes would come over time. One thing happened that admittedly had me fooled for a bit. My hourly pay was increased. Now, I was told not to talk about the money, but I'm going to talk about it. And I'm going to let you guys know here because fuck it. My hourly pay was increased from $15 and change per hour. It kept going up a few cents every year, to $23.98 per hour. Ooh, nice, right? Yeah, okay. When that happened, I thought, quote, "Finally, getting some respect that I deserve after 3 years of turning a blind eye not only to bullshit, but shit that I could have sued them for," unquote. One other thing I found out was on the way. The hour, starting in 2017, would change to a straight 8-hour workday, 48-hour work week. And not the 12-hour workday, 36 hours one week, 48 hours, meaning 40 hours at regular rate plus 8 hours at time and a half the next. This was significant because it meant the pay raise was bullshit. Most of us on the weekday night shift did some simple math and found out we would be losing money annually. I stood to lose a little over $4,000 gross each year. Apart from demanding that don't talk about the money. Oops. As everyone knows not to do. Yeah, but again, oops. Pseudo oops. Two things that fool manager kept saying to me time and time again was, one, quote, "We want you to be in a more leadership position." Now, this is something that he's been saying since before he passed me up for the weekday night shift lead, and something I found out he told other people as well. And the second thing he's always said is, the company wants to see a return on their investment. Something I inwardly laughed at, considering there isn't much to do in the place, and despite that, the training, if you want to call it that, is such shit. Anyway. Whew. Despite that, I was still high off what I thought was a pay raise and looked to try to improve myself as much as I could. Looking back on it, I don't know why. There was no part of the job that required any advanced knowledge only gotten from certifications or a degree, but whatever. I asked to learn as much as I could from one of the two people there, the longest, and as far as I was concerned, unofficial manager of the place. Okay. What the actual manager claimed he took that to mean was that I wanted to move to the weekday day shift. This was not the case. Okay. Something I did not want to do in the least bit, since I now have to face rush hour traffic both ways and have to deal with all the people in the building in the daytime. Okay. What I didn't realize was that this was the end of the end. And it started like this. I worked at this place from July 2013 to November 2016. For all but the last 4 months of my time there, I was either on the weekend night shift or the weekday night shift. Sometimes I did overtime and ended up being on both shifts. Meaning 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. When did I sleep? During the day, obviously. Well, I get moved to the weekday day shift. This is 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And I didn't have any time to adjust my sleep schedule. I had 3 days off between when I got my shift switched and was expected to apparently undo 3 fucking years of sleep pattern in 3 days. The first day on the new shift, the manager sees me asleep in my car and calls up to the shift lead and the unofficial boss and apparently tells them to call him the moment I get back in the office. This was despite the fact that the shift lead let him know I was on my break. What this fool didn't know was that I had seen him coming and pretended to be asleep so as to not make eye contact. Plus, I had the alarm on my phone set to wake me up 10 minutes before my hour break was over, just in case I had truly fallen asleep. Slept off, really. I get back, they tell me what he said for them to do, and at that moment, I spent 20 minutes writing a rather scathing letter to HR, which I still have saved on my flash drive to this day. I actually moved it to Thunderbird, but whatever. I have it in both places, actually. Detailing his constant harassment. This is the manager's constant harassment. Unfortunately, I never sent it because I couldn't lose the job quite yet for personal and non-financial reasons. Yeah, it wasn't the money. It was other reasons which I can't get into why I didn't want to lose the job. It wasn't benefits either, obviously. Money would have fixed that. The next day, the manager calls me into a side office, and I get the truth. That I was moved to the day shift not because of me wanting to learn as much as I could from the unofficial boss, but because he was told that I sleep too much, and this move was intended to help. What actually. What I should have said to this was, how exactly am I the best logger on all 4 shifts on all 4 shifts? What does it say? What does it say? What does it say about everyone else that's supposedly awake the entire shift and supposedly work the whole time and they can't beat someone that's asleep? Numbers don't lie, as you can't stop telling me every 2 seconds. and the screenshots I have show me with the highest numbers. And that's by the end of the week and by the end of the month. At the very least by the end of the month. If I ever take a day off or take a huge amount of time off and somebody's far ahead, I can come back in 2 weeks and still by the end of the month end up being on top. Anyway, can't beat someone that's asleep, unquote. The highest numbers, blah, blah, blah. What I ended up saying was nothing. Once again, I couldn't quite lose the job just yet without problems, none of which was involving money. This imbecile even had the nerve to tell me, this is the manager here, the official one, the actual manager, nerve to tell me, quote, I don't know anyone that needs to sleep in the middle of the day. Once again, I said nothing, despite the fact that what I wanted to say was, when the fuck do you think the people on both night shifts sleep? You know? In any case, I was done and hoping that the personal reason I had for holding on to this job would hurry up and finish so I could go squirrel nuts on this place and tell everyone, one and all, everything they needed to hear about themselves. Funny thing is, I caught so many people asleep and called them out on that weekday day shift. I caught so many people asleep and called them out. I mean, didn't directly confront them or anything, but I let it be known. Hey, yo, this person's asleep, that person's asleep, this person's asleep, right? Okay. And called them out. Hell, while on my way to the bathroom, I even caught a manager from a completely different department dead asleep with a drool coming out of his mouth and what looked like a mail order / Russian porn site, / porn site Russian girl on his computer screen on top of a game of solitaire. I took a pic of the girl, because she looked kind of hot. Okay. I took a pic of the girl on the screen and showed it to one guy who I now know is a snitch. I get called in the office, and the manager gets on my ass about it, telling me the guy you took a picture of was a manager, dude. As though that makes it okay. You know, I bet if his boss came in and saw him, that, or the CEO, they wouldn't be all that happy about it, him being a boss or not. Okay. He also then goes and says, and, quote, it's illegal to record somebody without their consent. Yeah. About that. Since again, I know everyone in there is going to watch this video at some point, right? Number one, I still have all the paperwork I signed when I started that job, and nowhere in said paperwork, I checked them, nowhere in said paperwork did I sign giving anyone in that place consent to record me. Yet despite that, you all have had me on at least video recording, if not video and audio recording, for 3 years. There are cameras in that place. I never gave you all permission to do that. So there's that. Two, as far as illegal, Maryland law. As far as Maryland law is concerned, quote, Maryland is an all-party consent state, which means you have to get permission from all parties to a conversation before you can record it. But unlike Illinois or Massachusetts, Maryland's law does include a privacy provision. That is, if the non-consenting party does not have a reasonable expectation of privacy with respect to the conversation that has been recorded, there is no violation of the law. State and federal courts across the country have determined that there is no reasonable expectation of privacy in public spaces. This is why someone can snap a picture of you in public without your consent. And what this basically means is good luck getting me taking a picture of a computer screen to stick, even if someone who didn't consent was partially in it and their face wasn't even visible, confirming it was them. Yeah, we're not in your own private house. You're in a public area. You know, somewhere that's private, you can whip your dick out or whip your pussy out and jack off, chill off, whatever the hell. You couldn't do that where he was. It was a public enough area. You cannot expect privacy in a place like that. Right. That also applies to all the other people that I recorded for insurance sleeping. So yeah, all the people that I caught sleeping, I have video recording of them saved here on my computer. Yeah. Okay. little insurance proof of my claims. Anyway, and again, law, feel free to go look it up. Now then, you may be wondering, how do you know the guy that I showed to was a snitch? Well, simple. There's only 2 cameras on the floor in the area where we were, and you can see which way they're pointed if you look close enough. Then, they weren't pointed to where the manager was, and they don't turn, and they don't rotate. Then there's the fact that no one else on the floor, that there was no one else on the floor at the time, and all the people that I worked with are in an area on that floor where the door is almost always locked. Then there's the fact that he was the only person I showed it to. No one else knows I took it but him. So either he ran his mouth or he ran his mouth to someone else who ran their mouth. Finally, when it happened, he was the only one acting uneasy when I locked eyes on him and started getting overly friendly like he was hiding something. In any case, I knew then to watch out for that crooked-eyed fuck. And he's the only person in there with his eyes kind of messed up, so you all know who the fuck I'm talking about. No names, eh? For anyone wondering at this point, I'm months out from being let go, and in that time, all the nails had been infused into the coffin now, and it's just bells and whistles as far as shit that's happening and shit that I'm realizing. Well, for one, it was made apparent to me that the manager was a liar and didn't know shit about computers. And I wouldn't say didn't know shit about it. I probably shouldn't say that. Didn't know anywhere near as much as he let on, right? Despite claiming to be some former Linux admin. Okay, how do I know this? Simple. Before the SSDs were put into the computers we used, they were running slow as hell. I tried everything to get it to speed up, including running a RAM disk. Guess he got wind of this, and I was called into his office about it. I told him what I had done and why, and then he asked me, RAM disk, what's that? I paused for a second, wondering if he was serious, then seeing he was, I explained it to him, and he tried to do that bullshit some people do, where at the very end of you explaining some shit they didn't know anything about before, they try to finish what you were saying as though they knew all along. They just wanted to see if you knew. It's like, blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah. Okay, right. No, he didn't know. Okay. Linux admin. RAM disk is archaic shit, and yet he didn't know what that was. He needed an explanation. Okay. Anyway. To me, for a former supposed Linux admin to not know what RAM disk is, as archaic as that technology is, despite it still being used by servers and such, is the equivalent of a person with a PhD in mathematics not knowing how to add or subtract, or a certified master auto mechanic not knowing what engine oil is, much less how to change it. Another instance was these conferences he would go to and come back all misty-eyed at what he learned. That I learned from my computer security class in high school, that's from 2001 to 2005, and again in college. Another security class. Computer security class. Example is the credit cards networks and how they work and what they really are. A login and password versus what people believe they are or have this thought in their mind as though it is. No, what it really is. A login and password, just like a login and password on your computer. Login, password, account, done. The amount of shit he didn't know for all the supposed experience he had made me either look at him laughing so hard in my mind that you could hear me thinking, or not being able to stomach seeing him and keeping my head down, ignoring whatever shit he was saying, usually going off on some tangent with some unrelated story, as though us employees are the only people that listen to him because his wife shuts him down and his bullshit stories down at home. The only other thing I bothered to note about this idiot is how he would joke around and say shit that, at the risk of sounding like the average Western female, sounded creepy and that in all actuality could be considered sexual harassment to the one Chinese girl working there. I guess he could get away with it since, by her own admission, she didn't even have a green card and she's there on some work visa. In any case, I guess her not running her mouth to HR about some of the things he says is leverage for her to not do shit in that place and not get fired. Especially since China is asleep when she works and she, for whatever reason, won't go on the weekday night shift where she can be of more use. Why don't they simply hire a Mandarin speaking male and put him on the weekend night shift where he can be of use, you ask? You know what? Your guess is better than mine. So it's coming up to the end of the year, and it's use it or lose it time as far as paid time off. I, thinking ahead, had asked for the time off from August. Asked for the time off for December from August. I've been doing that all the years I've been working there, actually. Not sure why I was told by the manager that, quote, he has to see if anyone else wants that time, considering I asked first, and as far as I know, it's first come, first serve. I get called into the conference room and was told I was being let go. Actually, one moment. Not sure why I was told by the manager that he has to see if anybody else wants that time, considering I asked first, and as far as I know, it was first come, first serve. But I got my time off, and I was ready to go, ready for the year to be over. On the last day of November, this is November 2016, last of November, the day before my vacation started, I get called into the conference room, and I was told I was being let go. A smile came over my face, and I tried to rush them to get it over with as fast as possible, signing whatever the hell they wanted, which I asked for a copy of and never got, even though I was told I would get it, just to get out of Shawshank immediately. I got escorted out, and once outside, I looked up at the sun, smiled, finally free. Right, and that's that. There's just two other things. Final points. Final point of this story. After actually started, the final point of the story actually started when I decided to look for another job. So this was actually way back. When I started, the manager had told when I started this job that I'm leaving or just left. The manager had told me in the interview how this place was going to look good on the resume, and that with the experience I get here, excuse me, I could take it anywhere and get a job paying almost double this. Come in here, get your 1 or 2 years experience, and move on. Found out that was bullshit too, at least here in the DC metro area. See, I have a friend that works at Northrop Grumman, and I had him look over my resume, and he found it very amusing. According to him, I'm overqualified to be a computer technician, and that's it. Alright. As far as my SOC analysis experience, he leveled with me that based on what I did at this place, it was SOC in name only, and that's it. What I did there is remedial shit compared to what actual SOCs in real places do. Okay? If that wasn't bad enough, with every person that was interested in my resume, the one thing that they kept asking was, quote, what kind of clearance do you have? To which point, I started to sound like I'm trying to burp and sneeze at the same time. Was like, wait, what? Clearance? What? What? Once it was found out that I had no clearance, and the job didn't seem to need one, and the job that I did didn't need one. It didn't. I never heard back from any of them again. Any of these prospective employers, from any of them ever again. I kept wondering, what the fuck was this clearance bullshit, and how do I get it? It wasn't until I picked up these two guys who, I was doing Uber at this point. I'm like, what the fuck is this clearance shit? You know, I'm doing Uber. Um, these two guys who work in some international arm of somewhere in the government, and heard one of them saying things about DARPA. He was talking about some shit going on with DARPA. That it hit me to ask him. The ease at which he leveled with me was kind of eerie, but considering some of the other powerful people, or in some cases people that work for powerful people, that have Ubered around DC and Virginia, and how they just said shit for me to hear, that I know I'm not supposed to hear or know without being shot or locked up in Guantanamo, I figured this isn't going to get me tracked if all the other shit that I've heard, which probably the president doesn't even know, hasn't gotten me tracked yet, right? The two things he told me were, one, you can't apply for a clearance, you have to be sponsored for it. Just to do a basic clearance background check costs like low tens of thousands of dollars. To do a full exhaustive check with like private eyes, talking to all the neighbors you've ever had and all that costs in the mid tens of thousands. So that's like 10,000 to 50 plus thousand, depending on the kind of clearance that you need to get. That's why everyone wants you to come with one, and no one wants to sponsor you for it. Okay, so it wasn't anything wrong with me personally. It's just that they're trying to be cheap. They want you to come with an active clearance. They're not trying to sponsor that shit. Okay. The next thing he told me was, all the job postings you see where they want an impossible amount of skills and experience, and there's no way you're going to have all that unless you're in your mid-40s at the least, is because they only post that job to seem fair to the public. The more long and specific the request as far as skills and experience, the more that job was already going to be given to someone internally from some other part of the organization. In all, what I heard was that I wasted 3 years of my life for nothing, and the bullshit bronze security certification that I got out of this place only carries pseudo weight inside that company. So that shit is only the bronze, the silver, the gold. It's only useful at Markmonitor. And that bronze and silver shit, I don't know about the gold, I didn't bother even looking at it, but the bronze and silver shit, I learned that in high school once again. Okay? And that was back before like phishing and stuff was even as widespread as it is now and all that. And I still learned it back in high school, so it didn't really help me, you know. Only carries pseudo weight inside that company, meaning it's no CompTIA Security Plus certification. So even that had to stay off my resume, because everybody's going to be like, well, bronze certification, what the hell is this? Like, and then I got to go explain it, and then they're going to be looking at me like, okay, nigga. Right? So to anyone still working there, or thinking of working there, do note all of that. For anyone wondering, the few people that moved on as far as better jobs in the IT field after this place, they either were overqualified for this place from the start and was using this place as a pit stop because jobs are hard to come by, at least in today's day and age. Whenever you see this video, whatever, I don't know. Or they got certs and or degrees, plus had connections the whole time. You know, after getting those certs and degrees to seem official. In either case, they could have gotten the better job without having to set foot in this place. Right, now, this last part is a list, just a list of things that, apart from everything else that you may have been able to extract rather, from all of what I just read off. Here's a list of some basic bullet point things that you should do if nothing else. Okay, now then, some bullet points for one and all to take with them in addition to whatever you may have been able to extract from all that was said before. 1. Record any and all interactions when you get quote-unquote pulled into anywhere to talk to anyone. If they won't agree to it, then the encounter is over. And keep an electronic paper trail of everything off company property, meaning have a flash drive or send it to your personal email. In my case, Thunderbird for the win. 2. Always keep looking for a better job if you're making less than $50,000 net each year and you're single with no kids, much less. 3. Don't tolerate being talked at by anyone. Within reason. If you, okay, let this shit go this one time, but don't make it a fucking habit to sit there and be bitched out by anybody, okay? Don't tolerate being talked at by anyone. Let the reputation spread that you have no problem going to HR and to your lawyer if need be. Workplaces are scared of women claiming whatever. There's a reason why they aren't worried about men, and it's about time. And it's the same reason, actually. Men put up with a lot of shit they do. And they don't want to put up with it. You don't want to? Then don't. 3. When leaving, don't sign a fucking thing. This is a mistake I made. I was too overzealous to get out of there. Don't sign a fucking thing. You aren't obligated to, no matter what they claim. Tell them you'll be happy to have your lawyer look at it. And as far as I know, they have to pay you no matter what. So it's not like, well, if you don't sign this, we'll hold your paycheck. Please hold that paycheck, because then I'm going to get far more out of you when I sue you for not paying me for hours worked, services rendered, labor rendered, whatever the hell, I don't know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Be very wary of places where there's an overabundance of any one group of people. In the case here, there was an overabundance of Turkish people and there was an overabundance of Muslims. I'm very wary when there's a majority, fill in the blank, that make up a workplace. I have yet to see it not sooner or later put an overall strain on things. Despite being black, I sure as hell don't do all black workplaces. I also don't do all Asian, East Indian, or Middle Eastern workplaces. Working at Godiva in White Flint Mall when they were here proved to me that being the only guy in a sea of women isn't good despite how it seems. And I can't even imagine how it would be to be the only straight person, especially straight male. Straight women might not have a problem, but especially straight male in an all LGBT workplace. That would be interesting. Not that I'm trying to figure it out. Not that I'm trying to experience it, though. Not trying to. At the risk of sounding like one of these diversity types, there needs to be a good cross-section of people, and they need to be independent, meaning you have your diversity, but they're all kissing white ass and sucking white dick because of some self-hating white superiority complex that they may have. Think, okay, it's all Asian people, but the Asian guys are kind of like off in the corner and all the Asian girls are like trying to suck and fuck the one white guy or the group of white guys that are there, right? That kind of shit, you know? just as an example. Or it's diverse, but they all suck extra black dick does not seem racist, or stay licking clit like a dog drinking water to not seem sexist. Be very wary of that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Don't be afraid to simply walk out. Jobs gives you warnings via meetings. You give jobs warnings via reports to HR. In case you didn't realize, few if any job gives you 2 weeks notice before they fire you. Why exactly do you need to give them 2 weeks notice before firing them? And lastly, 6. Regarding the previous point, oh, but you can't do that. You can't just walk out. Why not, I ask. You want to look good for other jobs and bosses, eh? Sounds like you need the money. And that brings me to my very final point and the final part of this video. At most, if at all, only want the money, never need the money. How do you do that? Okay, simple. Minimalism, don't have kids, don't have a wife, be debt-free, be financially free to live and live off the interest of whatever investments you have, etc. But that's a video for another day. And there you have it, people. My review of Markmonitor, formerly of Thomson Reuters, now Clarivate Analytics of Bering Asia. and onyx, or whatever the hell, onyx bearing Asia, whatever it is. Have fun, and anybody who thinks they're going to come get me for this video, come and try. Later.